Hello, you are watching an exclusive interview series by South Asia Research Institute for Minorities. Welcome to the power of creative expression and challenging caste-based discrimination, the interview that explores diverse perspectives and experiences. I'm your host, Heman, Senior Research Associate at SARIM. And today I'm honored to have a Gaurav J Pathania, a renowned sociologist of higher education. Gaurav shares his experiences as an anti-caste writer, poet, and activist, discussing how he utilizes creative expressions to challenge the caste-based discrimination. The episode features examples of his anti-caste poetry and the expertise in the field. Gaurav has dwelled into the realm of caste, class, and racial discrimination, examining identity movements among university students in United States. He is also the author of the book The University is a Site of Resistance, Identity, and Student Politics. Gaurav, thank you for being here with us today. So, without any further ado, let's dive into the questions. Your book, The University is a Site of Resistance, Identity, and Student Politics, explores the role of universities in contemporary identity and movements. Could you please share with us some of the key insights from your research and how university can serve as a catalyst for social change?
Well, thank you, Heman. First of all, thank you for hosting me, and it's really pleasure talking to a research organization. Uh, I have some based here in Washington D.C., and I teach at a university called Eastern Mennonite University. So, in my research, thank you for mentioning the book. This book was published now a few years ago. And this was part of my PhD research. So, where I explored the campus space. What do students do in campus life? So, I mean, we all actually went through that phase. So we are very much familiar with what happens on campuses and how the student politics is being projected. And generally, what are the notions of people, the area where I come from, student politics is actually seen as a kind of, rowdyism, gundaism, and these kind of things. But when I went to JNU and saw the way students organize themselves in a very democratic way, and so that's what I was kind of inspired me to write about it, right? And I myself as a student was very kind of influenced by these whole campus space. So then for my PhD I studied India's longest surviving student politics, which was the student movement for separate statehood. You must have heard the state Telangana, that actually very few people know that it has a 50-year-long struggle that students did of Osmania University. So I did a ethnography of Osmania University. So and I after studying all these campuses, even in Hyderabad, Bombay, Delhi, now I realized that there is so much power that these campus spaces have, and students can use that power to bring social change. And there can be many types of social change we can talk about. And so when I say student politics and social change, it's not just about protesting and shouting slogan. It's much deeper, like the intellectual discussion that they have, and the kind of work they do also outside campus. So it is like, the campus remains it's kind of what they call, uh, it is reflection of, so university space is a reflection of what happens outside society, what's happened in the mainstream society. So it's the kind of clear reflection of. So I was trying to understand this connection, and also what students do and how do they bring this social change? How do they organize themselves? So how do they come up with these new issues to protest? So that was overall my area. But for specifically for the book, it was a mapping, documenting that 50-year-long struggle where Telangana lost, Osmania lost 1,500 of its students in police actions and all those things. And also there was other issues that we'll discuss about suicides and everything. This is what campus space for me. is that how it actually brings social change with this perspective that there is a famous saying I learned from JNU. They said, if politics decides your future, then you should decide what your future is. So what your politics is. So so students actually decide what your politics should be, and that is what where campus space kind of provide that platform for social change. It provides that space to think and that whole creative energies that we have. And I think that is where the campus roles comes in. And the more you go back in the history, you will find, and that's what inspires me, that when you look at even the Western history, 1960s, which is the landmark era in Western university education, that when you talk about free speech movement, LGBT movement, feminist movement, anti-war movement, these are all actually emerged from the campus. So my argument is that it is the campus who actually sow the seeds of this social change, and without campus politics, it is hard to imagine the mainstream politics as well. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting to know that about your research, which is really unique from other research being conducted. So, with that, my second question is in your ethnographic research with a focus on caste, class, and racial discrimination, how have you observed these issues manifest in the context of higher education among diaspora communities?
So that's my current research that I'm doing, the diaspora research, which actually recently I started in, but then COVID hit, and I'm kind of still trying to do now in person. But during COVID, it was hard. But then we have a term called digital ethnography that you also can do, like as we are talking. But that's kind of a hard way to do. So I have been an ethnographer for past 13 years. And as an ethnographer, I think first struggle as a researcher, I just want to, and I mean, if we have student audience, then I would love to talk to, share with them that as an ethnographer, one often struggles to get access to the subject or to the data. So it's my personal experience that I faced several times, that how one is welcomed as an ethnographer in the field, and sometimes they you have to like struggle very hard to get through or get in the data or meet your subject. And there are issues of gender, there might be issues of caste, there might be issues of class, that all this comes in, that how people respond to you. So that's one thing, that how you navigate these processes. Second is I realize that spaces are very important in ethnography. Like here now we are in digital space, but when we are in person, physical space, then you have, like I was studying campus politics. So I was looking at these spaces. For example, when you look at a university campus, you enter in a campus, so you have the hostel spaces, you have the classroom spaces, you have the dhaba spaces, chai dhaba spaces, cafeteria spaces, library spaces, right? And then you have recreational facility there. So there's so many spaces, that how as an ethnographer you map those out, and how do you make sense of all these spaces. And so many way you have to, as an ethnographer, you do a lot of you sacrifice a lot of comfort, because everything is data around you. You're always kind of dealing with data. So the so there are there's a lot of these things that I can talk about, how ethnography works. Now, especially when you are talking about very delicate issues like gender and caste, and also deeper issues of trauma and all, then ethnography also becomes very challenging. And how do you, for example, if you're studying student suicide, how would you actually make sense of that whole scene? Or how do you get to the truth, right? That's what our goal as a researcher is, that you get to the truth. Now that's why you will there is a big challenge in, I say that in law, it's been decades and decades that no one is actually studying issues of suicide or deeper issues of mental health, because it's very challenging as an ethnographer. But that's what we have been doing. So that is one area among students. The second one that you mentioned about diaspora, so that I'm currently doing, is that understanding their activism on a foreign land. What do they do? How do they get connected? How do they meet in such a big, very huge space? In US is 3 times bigger than India in terms of geography. And so how do they make sense? How do they meet? Where do they meet? What are their platforms? So there are, and as an ethnographer, you do kind of always try to navigate, find out resources, that how you actually conduct these researches. So um, so I think uh, dealing with the personal space, private spaces, and political spaces. These are all these bigger areas as an ethnographer that I think are very, very exciting. Sometimes you feel like ethnographer work like a spy, because feel like every time you are dealing with data and you don't want to lose, right? So it's an exciting field of study, because then you keep you're dealing with, like, for example, even when you call each other, like these days you do WhatsApp text messages. Could that be used as a data? So you are always kind of questioning that what is data, what is not data, because you are dealing with a mountain of data in data in front of you. So this new field I'm entering in the diaspora studies, I'm trying to understand what have they done in terms of anti-caste diaspora. That's my focus now. So I'm focusing on the anti-caste activism among diaspora.
Yeah, I totally agree with you that we are covered by the data everywhere.
Mhm.
So, in your article, Caste Identities and Structure of Threats, you explore the concept of stigma, caste-based discrimination, prejudice, social discrimination in Indian universities. How do these factors impact the experiences of marginalized students, and what are the potential strategies of dismantling these structures of discrimination?
Yeah, Heman, I think this is one of the issues that we started, but we need to do uh, much longitudinal studies in this area. Now, let me tell you, give you just a glimpse of what is happening in India. Uh, if you check and this is not my data, there is this is a government data that has been collected, and according to that data, which was presented by the minister in the Rajya Sabha, a minister from Rajasthan, and it is such a shocking data that we are losing thousands and thousands of young students, university students every year, just because of these issues that are not being addressed, mental health issues. So we are losing by suicide. So around 30,000 students in last 10 years have committed suicide. Um, from 2014 to 16, that was a very particular data I wrote a lot about that. In 3 years, 25,000 students committed suicide, and government actually have not taken any action. Government even does not even recognize mental health as a serious issue. So these are the issues that we were trying to understand. And this particular paper was part of a project that was initiated after Rohit Vemula's suicide. And so now we are trying to say that there has been a constant denial of or attributing of these issues of depression, distress, and so this denial has been going on. So but the research is telling that whatever research that we've been doing at a very, very limited scale, but that this trend is suggesting that there is a structural relationship between the caste identity and suicide, because there was a study done by Professor Nair who said that for every 25 cases of suicide, 22 or 23 are Dalits. So there's a clear caste case that coming up. But again, because we don't have the categorization of this data by the government, so it will take a lot of time to understand. So it needs to be emphasized, and that's what we did in this paper, for that for policymakers, caste discrimination and depression has been uncharted territory of higher education. So there should be a genuine dialogue between health and social science, which is still missing. And so India doesn't show any positive sign of bridging this gap. And South Asian social system of caste that is producing this suffering, and the consequences of which is also include poor psychological well-being. So these are all issues that are not talked about. The neglect of caste in public health research is a general phenomena, and mental health in particular, it strongly impact well-being. So when I'm saying mental health, I'm focusing more on the well-being of our students. See, the all the research, I mean, you have also interviewed many other people on caste scholars. All the research so far on caste has been only showing the plights of Dalit, the discrimination of Dalit, and that's what we. But that is very non-fact. That because as long as there is a caste, the discrimination is going to happen. But I think we need to now dig deeper that how it is affecting individual. And this example I gave, that if thousands of students are dying because of suicide, then there are serious issues that we need to understand, and we fail to understand so far. So issues of caste prejudice, stereotypes, these needs to study at deeper level. And then there might be another area that actually very least studies. For example, the issues of tribes. There are so very few studies on the situations of tribe. What happens to their students? So these are, I think, all these. So when we talk about the minorities, I think these different issues of minorities among Indian population needs to be addressed, and that now is affecting worldwide. Now this trauma stays, like the trauma that comes from this kind of stigmatized identity, it stays forever. So there should be some kind of intervention by the policies, by the mental health experts, by people who are working in this area of well-being.
Yeah, I totally agree that the caste is very much integrated into the people of South Asia. So it is really hard to escape from that. As Mr. Gaurav, you are an anti-caste writer, poet, and activist. You bring a unique perspective to your work. How do you use your creative expression to challenge caste-based discrimination? Can you share some of the example of anti-caste poetry and its impact? Do you see any tension or challenges in balancing these roles?
Yeah, so I think the word anti-caste is a very it's kind of I see that people are newly using this word, the anti-caste poetry. Some people use it as an Ambedkarite poetry. Some people call it, the poetry of Dalits poetry and all. So there is a whole ideas around the different narratives people have created. But I think the the major thing about talking about the perspective, like where this perspective come from. This perspective, first of all, has never been recognized. It is very recent. I mean, you must have seen my poem that is on social media nowadays. So that's the very basic argument I'm saying, that, and I still struggle with this tension, that how the people who the people who come from the privileged caste, they try to make literature, poetry, or any kind of literary form as a very sacrosanct kind of phenomena. But what I'm arguing is that, when there is so much inequality, there's so much untouchability, so much caste discrimination that goes on, that why there is so much fuss about literature, right? We should actually first deal with the human being and see their voices are being represented or not. Now, and that's what I wrote in that poem, that if the first Dalit autobiography in Hindi, in Marathi and other languages have come way before, but in northern part in Hindi, this is the first autobiography called Jhuthan. And when it came, I remember actually how people were kind of rejecting it. In these are the educated people who are saying, how literature could be Dalits and all. And when you read these artworks, people say, "Oh, this is a this is very dirty literature, very talking about all these abuse, verbal abuse and all this." And I said, "But that is what is happening in the society. So literature should represent what is happening in the society." See, people accepted that in films. You see all these Bollywood films, and there is all these web series that is going on. It's a very raw kind of representation they do. But when a lower caste person telling his story is kind of has to face that backlash of the privileged caste. And I think that is what the challenge that not just me, but I think the entire the people from marginalized section has to face. And this is the tension, and that I think there's nothing wrong in that, because that is how the history is changed. That when you are writing anti-caste poetry, it has a deeper impact, and only people who believe in idea of democracy, people who believe in idea of brotherhood and democracy, they would understand it. But does this perspective come from the lived experience, right? So people who have lived now in academia, I think that every voice should be represented. What about the voices of tribal people? What of voices of LGBT, transgender? Where are their voices? But they are very much part of every society, right? So when will their voices come? And when they will write their literature, of course, the privileged caste would be threatened. But they are telling the truth, the rawness of what is going on in their life. And I think that is what anti-caste poetry is. It is bringing that life world into the forefront that has never been talked about. And let me give you comparing it with the Western example. Now here, it's a very in Hollywood, it's a very, very recent phenomena that people from the African American community now entering in the Hollywood as a director, as a person who are decision maker. And it's because of them now the black lives are coming in the forefront, which was never given any space. Until 10 years ago, there was not even any black African American producer or director. So this is recent change. So some people accept it, some people actually always having that create that tension, and which is very obvious, because no one wants to shed their privilege, and because people don't understand their privilege, right? So and that is one of the goal of the art, literature, or any kind of art form, that to make people realize that you are privileged or you are underprivileged in many ways. So but one should be very aware, and that is part of our humanity, living together with other beings, of other fellow citizens, that recognizing that yes, historically I'm privileged, socially I'm privileged, and if I'm not aware of that, then I'm doing injustice. For example, though I come from a marginalized section, but I'm always saying that I am also privileged as a male in a patriarchal society, right? And that's if I don't say that, Heman, then if I don't say that I'm a privileged as a male in patriarchal society, I will be doing injustice to that 50% of female population who doesn't have the same privilege like me. So these are the things I think everyone should recognize there, and that is the beauty of living in democracy. And I think that's what India should cherish. Right?
That's really thoughtful of you. I totally agree with that. As we talked about your work that extend beyond academia, and you actively engage in social activism, which is shown by your Twitter profile. What are some of the initiative or projects you have been involved in that aim to address caste discrimination and promote social justice?
So one of the thing that we are doing here right now is to, because I think as an activist is very overwhelming. There is so much to do, but I limit myself to the writings. So we are actually as an activist, as an Ambedkarite activist, or an anti-caste activist, I try to help people who needs help in writing. I've been helping them in their thesis, PhD thesis, and also helping them in their poetry writing, literary writing. So that's why we started it's called Authors Lab, and where we help the first generation learner. because that's where those are that's the section that always facing challenge. Second, third generation have a different kind of approach, but first generation higher education learner needs a lot of help in writings, and that's what my goal is there, to provide that help, because I think I am in a place where I can help, and helping them is kind of part of my activism. And that's where I say, the idea of social justice is not just to protest, shout slogan, and be there, but I think creating this or helping this generation who in their expression is also part of social justice. So that's where I limit my activism. And of course, there are many other, we are part of the legal activism, we're part of many other different alliances that we are doing, formation we are doing. We are aligning with people from the marginalized groups. Like a few years ago, I went to Japan to form an alliance with a community that faces historically similar kind of untouchability that Dalit faces in India. It's called a Burakumin community in Japan. So there are many of these communities, like same Roma communities in Eastern Europe. So we try to make, these are all part of our activism. So there are global solidarities. In US, we are trying to do the African American, aligning with African American to understand their activism, because they have been a guiding force. If you look at the anti-caste movement in India, for example, now the Dalit literature has taken inspiration from Black literature, right? And now you have some of our friends are running the Dalit Lives Matter campaign, that also inspired by Black Lives Matter. So I think these are all the alliance that we do. Yeah.
Yeah, as your research is distinct from the other researches, the meaning of social justice is you also differ it from others. The issue of caste census has been the topic of debate in India. In your view, why it is important to include caste as category in official data collection, and how it can contribute to addressing caste-based discrimination effectively?
I think caste census, or even the debate of caste and own caste census, is also itself a reflection of that, how caste is such a prominent category. Why there is so much debate? Because caste is so prominent. Every day, there are incidents of killing, of thrashing, of rapes, and all kind of very, very inhuman violence that is going on in the name of caste. So I really wonder that why people are opposing this. This should have done way before. So then we know actually when we're talking about representation, we're living in a democracy. So we need to talk about representation, and for representation, we need to understand what's the number of the people. So and which has been long pending, and I think it was done hundreds of years ago. And I think it helped building caste solidarities. And also, how do you kind of plan a anti-caste strategies, or how do you in Ambedkar's language will annihilate caste if you don't know the number, right? So and numbers are very important, because we have an affirmative action policies in India still in place, and the way new caste is being included in the schedule, and also scheduled tribe. So I think this is kind of one step towards understanding that how our democracy works, and numbers are very important to bring new policies. And now I think there is a lot of debate about the policies on affirmative action with the wake of privatization. I think there is new debates are coming up, that should there be a private reservation in privatization and all these debates. And I think the best way to answer all these debates is that one, government should have a proper data on how to actually implement, and what section is needed proper affirmative action policies. There are so many castes which are not even included in the schedule. I think so. What caste census will do, it will actually bring them to the new light of data, and would help people. I think so. I think it should not be opposed. And all the political parties, it would help political parties also to design like where should the representation go in what caste are not being represented. And you know, Heman, you if you study the caste system, there are thousands of caste, and but we what we know actually is just only a few bunch of caste and those who are politically represented. But we are talking about thousands of caste. Among the OBCs, there are thousands of castes. Among Dalits, there are few hundreds of castes which are not being represented. So I think caste census would help at least us understand this number. That's all.
Lastly, what are your hopes for the future regarding the fight against caste-based discrimination in the promotion of equality? Are there any specific initiatives or movement that you find particularly promising, or is there any organization that you're working for with on this purpose?
Um, I'm just kind of drawing upon the previous question that you asked. Like these, and you gave the example of Pakistani Hindus. I think if it, and this is the duty of the government, that they are obliged to document those voices, those who are at the margin. And census is one way of doing that. Now, you asked about that what are the future of regarding fight against caste discrimination. And I think the this is the first step, that first of all we know who are our fellow citizens. Who people sitting in bigger cities have no idea like how many tribes do we have. There are so many tribal population even in the northern part of India, but we are unaware of that. In Rajasthan has so many, but only we knew only few of them who are being politically represented. So I think to first thing to fight against caste is to at least know that how many castes we have, how many different communities that are not being represented. Second, that in the promotion of equality, we have, this is a long battle. It's not going to end soon. It's a very long battle, because the inequality is so deep rooted in our psyche, right? It exists in the mind. So Ambedkar said that by writing the constitution and putting the right to equality is not going to happen on its own. You have to continue fighting for it, right? And that's what I think all these anti-caste activism is doing, that you have to always be active, because government sometimes you have to you have to raise your voice for the government to be heard. And all these initiatives, all these anti-caste movement around are just asking that we need, first of all, representation, and now we need um, to for the government to recognize. So their issues are not being recognized, their identities are not being recognized. So many of these issues, I think so. But I am very hopeful, because this is I say that the beauty of democracy is that it provides you the space to resist. It provides you space to protest. And I think if that space can be broadened by these activism, I think that way we can actually include more voices. And I see that worldwide now, because caste is becoming a global issue, because wherever South Indian goes, or no, sorry, where South Asian goes, and I'm talking about again Pakistan, in India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, wherever you have the system, caste system prevail, now we are facing all these challenges. And I think this is making caste a global issues, right? And it is much deeper than race. Like race is right there in your, you see the people and discriminate. Here there are so many of these processes that one has to go through, and eventually with this education, with this awakening of your own identity, you people are understanding that this needs to be challenged. And I think I'm very hopeful for the next generation, who is trying to understand, who is also kind of in this limbo of this identity crisis. Many people I talk to, younger people, they find this as he said, what is this crap about that? Some people are superior just because of their birth, or by wearing this sacred thread, some people think themselves superior. So I think all these things are, the educated generation will completely boycott it in future, and I'm hopeful. But for that, we need to continuously keep working, educating people, and this is the onus on people like you and me who are coming from those sections, that this is our duty to educate people that you are privileged and you need to shed those privileges for the sake of equality, for the sake of democracy. And if we want democracy, we need to bring this idea through education. Our education never talked about castes in India. It teaches you at even master's level, it teaches, but it never tells you that you need to criticize it, you need to boycott it, you need to annihilate it. It is just taught as if it is a religious part, as if it is a religion, right? It is never taught with a consciousness of caste. So I think in 21st century, I'm very hopeful that there is a caste consciousness coming up. Of course, there is a tension, because when you talk about such a important or delicate subject, there will be a tension. For example, until and unless people talked about gender issues, no one actually was thinking, and everything is fine. And I give example of the US. Until 1960s, women were not here in the education system. Harvard universities, like our Ivy League universities, never allowed women to, as a student I'm talking about, and then as a faculty. You can Google that in Ivy League universities like Columbia University. Columbia University allowed women in the university in 1984. So imagine, I'm talking very, very, very recent inclusion of women in the higher education. That's why you don't see many of the participation in terms of faculty. So, but now in 50 years, you see the big change that has come up in 40 years. So I am very hopeful for India. I think it's still a beginning. I don't expect so much that things will turn upside down, but the fight for equality should go on, and I think taking the inspiration from global struggles, India, South Asia, and wherever the movements for equality goes on, they should take this inspiration from the successful movement that happened. And I'm wrapping up with saying the last word, that one should also study the Telangana movement, which is another very interesting movement, that that students can actually bring democracy in their state. Student can do whatever they want. Students have that power to change, to bring social change. Now, Telangana is completing 10 years of its statehood, and I was just talking to some people. Things are not the same. What they were dreaming for, and what they were hoping for after this 50 years of struggle, things are not going in that direction. So that's why we need more movements to continue the dialogue of democracy. So it's a dialogue, and through movements we keep dialoguing, right? And as we are talking about, this is all part of this activism that we are doing now. And so I'm very hopeful that the generations will uphold all the values of democracy, and social movement is the way to achieve those.
Yeah, that's true. I totally agree with that. Caste is the privilege that you carry. Thank you very much, Gaurav, for sharing your valuable insight and experiences with us today. It has been an enlightening conversation that highlights the importance of caste discrimination and class racial discrimination within higher education. We look forward your continued contribution to the field of caste discrimination and social justice. With that, thank you very much. I
Thank
hope
you,
you.
Heman. Thank you so much. Yeah.